The story of Ultraman Nexus began with Devilman, for whom many stories in Japanese pop culture descended. Lady Devilman in particular. Keiichi Asagawa, soon-to-be Ultraman Nexus head writer, was working on the OVA series alongside Ultraman writer and reoccurring character in Legacy of Ultraman, Chiaki J. Konaka. They began considering an idea while working, which essentially boiled down to what if Devilman met Ultraman in some type of a crossover form. From there it grew into an Ultraman project, with darker, more serious and mature themes similar to Devilman. Project Yellow Eyes was the codename for this project. Project Yellow Eyes would follow Vietnam War veteran named Jun Hiyama as he gains the power of Ultraman and become power-hungry along the way, as we examine the issue of heroism and what one would do if they possessed the power of Ultraman. This theme would be quite severe and unforgiving. Surprisingly, Subaraya Production approved it, and they began working on the film. Things were going well until the 9/11 terrorist attack. Subaraya Production felt that Project Yellow Eyes was not appropriate for the current context and needed to be altered and shelved until things settled down. Those alterations would result in a film that is quite similar to Ultraman the Next, however, is still far away from the 2004 film, because Project N did not begin until late 2003. Project Yellow Eyes was still very much its own thing at the moment. That changed with the cancellation of an Ultra show. The title of this Ultraman show was Ultraman Cross. What was the new show going to be about? The show's creator can't even recall anything. What they can recall is a show about a group of dropouts/rejects with no true place in the world, all gaining and passing on the ability to become an Ultraman. These troubled youth or older people would bear the brunt of being an Ultraman, as well the challenges of their everyday life. They were created to be the polar opposite of the typical Ultraman Defense Squad and host, to highlight how unusual and bizarre their situation was. The Ultra design for the show were supposed to be very out there as well. The concept of hosts sharing powers was inspired by head producer Hiroyosu Shibuya, who felt like a baton was passed to him when he was chosen to take over as head Ultra producer, along with his experience running in relay races. However, Ultraman Cross was having a difficult time moving past concepts. They couldn't decide what the show should be about, what the plot should be about, who the characters should be. All they had was a lovely concept. At this point, they remembered that an experienced Ultra writer, Keiichi Asagawa, was working on an Ultra film in the same building as them. They approached him with the idea of possibly combining the two works, thinking that the future film could serve as a foundation for the show. Asagawa was delighted to assist. In fact, he was so in love with the project and the idea of passing on Ultraman's ability, which reminded him of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, he wanted to be a part of it. He was interested in expanding the scope of his Project Yellow Eyes experiment, and he saw this as an opportunity to do so. The individuals working on Ultraman Cross were delighted to have him on board. Even though Ultraman Cross no longer existed, from this point moving forward, it was all Project N. Project Yellow Eyes and Ultraman Cross were now merged under new names. Yellow Eyes would be known as Ultraman or Ultraman the Next, a film that would be released before the show and serve as a prelude to the upcoming series and lay the foundation for the universe. The show, now called Ultraman Nexus, would use the ideas from earlier drafts of Project Yellow Eyes, but toned down and softer as Asagawa likes. Hasagawa had a clear vision for the show, which allowed them to breeze through the convincing and planning stages. By the time the performers were auditioning for the show, they knew every single twist and turn of the series from the start to the finish. People put their faith in Hasagawa's vision, and he had accumulated a slew of ideas for the series in the 4 years since he began working on Lady Devilman. However, aside from the idea of swapping Ultraman host, most of the concepts from Ultraman Cross were long gone and forgotten by this point. When the show went into production, the executive turmoil reached the Nexus creative. The old spending habits of Kazusubaraya era, when a show had no real set budget per episode and an entire show could cost anywhere from $52 million to over $100 million. The reports are very scattered, and the claims on how much he was spending were extremely all over the place, with one iconic example being when he spent $32 million on a single episode, were no longer tolerated. Nexus was heavily hurt by the per episode cap of roughly $0.9 million, which if it were a whole series would be around $46 million or less. There would be no spending exceptions. This shift in expenditure had a significant impact on Ultraman the Next. The financial cuts had a significant impact on how they approached making Nexus a reality. Most practical effects options were drastically reduced in an instant. The number of kaiju suits they could manufacture were dramatically reduced, as well as the amount of sets and sound stages they could have, and they couldn't film on location as frequently because they couldn't rent site for a long period of time. As a workaround, they created such notions as the metafield, which allowed them to employ one group of kaiju repeatedly and recycle kaijus, making them stronger, run away more frequently, or have regenerative capabilities. Another workaround was to employ CGI. They always had the intention to employ CGI in Nexus, to create larger-than-life sequences and effects that would not be achievable otherwise. But because of the limited budget, CGI had to replace several practical components of the show. When the word of this usage leaked out, many traditional Ultra fans were outraged and dismissed the entire show before it was aired. After all that talking, let's talk about Ultraman the Next and Ultraman Nexus. The Next follows First Lieutenant Maki of the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force, who is a prestigious F-15 Eagle jet pilot. A lifelong fan of flying since he was a child. Being a pilot was his ultimate dream. Unfortunately, his duties distance himself from his wife Yoko, who feels neglected, and his son Sugumu, who possibly has a terminal blood disease. Maki decided to quit the Air Force to devote more time to his family and spend whatever time is left with his son. On his final day, he and his flight partner are alerted to a strange red light streaking towards Japan. After his partner left because his jet was stopped functioning correctly, the red light passes through Maki's jet. Maki crashes but suffers no ill effects other than strange images briefly playing out in his mind. Later on, he gets a part-time job as a commercial tour guide for a kindly group of people who allow him time to take care of his family. On one of his fun days with his family, we see Sarah stalking Maki. On the next day, Sarah kidnaps Maki, and we discover about the BCST, an anti-biochemical terror research organization that was secretly founded by the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force that Sarah works at. They kidnapped Maki because his encounter with the red streak resembles something that happened to one of their soldiers. that a blue streak took him as a host, changing him physically and genetically as it withers away at his humanity. When he was taken back to the lab for interrogation, he absorbed the lizard to transform into a lizard-like humanoid creature which escaped by slaughtering its way through anyone who dared to get in his way. The beast was named the first, while Maki was named the next. The movie itself sets the connection between the beast and the Ultraman, with both hosts can sense each other, and the setup for our defense force and what's gonna happen with our Ultraman evolving more and more. It's worth noting that the next movie was essentially a remake of Ultraman's very first episode. Bemular is the first beast, while Ultraman is the second, and in the same way that Ultraman pursued Bemular to Earth, the next pursued the first, until the next crashed with the fighter plane. The next was a great movie, from acting to the action scenes, and the practical effects were absolutely amazing, but the production of the movie stalled and it took much longer to complete. It would no longer premiere before Nexus, but rather somewhere during the show's run, making it more difficult to understand what's going on in the series. Now, let's talk about Ultraman Nexus. It's been 5 years since the battle between the Next and the One, and everything appears to be normal. Too normal, like everybody forgot about it. In those 5 years, the BCST founded Tilt and the defense team the Night Raiders, that their job is to defeat the Space Beasts. Ultraman Nexus had a lot of firsts. One of them is the protagonist of the show not being the host of the titular Ultra or the Ultra itself, and our protagonist is Azuki Komon. Komon was a gentle, straightforward individual who was always willing to assist others. Komon was a member of a rescue team before he was recruited into the Night Raiders. As a child, Komon fell into a river and nearly drowned, only to be rescued by a mysterious figure that he mistook for being an alien. Because of that incident, Komon decided that he wanted to help others, and through joining the Night Raiders would be a good way to do so. He was initially uneasy about his recruitment by Tilt and disagreed with some of their methods. When the Night Raiders eventually met Ultraman Nexus, Kamon was the only one who hesitated to treat the giant as a space beast, even defending his host Junayama against his superiors prejudiced against non-human beings. He has all the qualities of an Ultraman protagonist, but he's not there yet, and having him not transform into Nexus straight off the bat was a bold choice, but it was the correct one. And his interaction with the Dunamist, the captain of the team, and the vice captain Nagi were great. Specifically Nagi, her being the complete opposite of Kamon, is great. Nagi's and Kamon's interactions are great because they almost develop each other. While Kamon saw the light and love, Nagi always saw the shadow and hatred. Nagi taught Kamon how to hate, while Kamon taught Nagi how to love again. And it's kind of interesting to see that since Kamon joined the Night Raiders, Kamon gained the knowledge about the Space Beasts. Kamon's life kind of got worse and worse, at least in the first half. It's almost like the knowledge of the Space Beasts is literally an omen of bad luck. Outside of his life as a Night Raider, Kamon has a girlfriend, a college student named Riko, that served basically as his support system when he gets down. So if Kamon feels bad, she will always be there for him because he doesn't get to see his mom and his dad. For some odd reason, because we never really got an explanation why he doesn't see his parents. At least I don't remember the show ever talking about it. Then there is the vice captain of the Night Raiders, Saijo Nagi. As I stated before, she's the extreme opposite of Kamon, seeing no difference between the Space Beast and the Ultraman, because as a child, an alien killed her parents, basically in front of her. And later on, she joined Tilt as a Night Raider, where she met for the first time Wakura Esuke, the captain of the Night Raiders, Raiders, Mitsuhiko Ishibori, and at that time vice captain of the Night Raiders, Mitsurugi. Something about Mitsurugi drew her to him. She saw him like a mentor for a number of reasons. One of them is both of their hatred towards the space beasts. But on one mission, Mitsurugi was pronounced dead, and from that moment, she closed herself off to everyone in exception to Captain Esuke, Ishibori, and Hiraki. At first, she and Kamon clashed a lot. She saw Kamon as someone that's not ready not only emotionally, but physically to be a Night Raider, and how much from time to time he proved her right. At least in the beginning of the show, she slowly warms up to him and almost takes the same role that Mitsurugi was for her. She's a great character. Again, she's really realistic because you can clearly see that people would be like that in the real world. So it's so weird but also so cool to see a character that's so realistic like Nagi clashes with almost like this very much an unrealistic character like Kamon that is way too positive and way too hopeful, now knowing there is weird beasts in the world that just want to eat human, and there is a big silver giant that wants to protect us, but also we don't know if he wants to protect us, because in the fight between the next and the first had a lot of casualties. And there is Captain Esuke. He's an excellent leader who acts decisively in any situation. He genuinely cares about his teammates and he's well liked by them. All through his motto is obey orders, he will go to any length to protect others. He's almost like a father figure to Kamon by giving him advice when he needs to and backing him up more than anyone else. I wish we got a more substantial episode surrounding him because he's a very interesting character that holds some baggage with his information that he knows more than anyone else in the Night Raiders. Then there is Hiraki Shori and Mitsuhiko Ishibori. Hiraki was transferred from her previous job as a police officer to the Night Raider squad. She has a good working relationship with the team analyzer, Ishibori, and she's frequently his co-pilot. She has a bubbly personality, enjoys doing her nails, and her main area of expertise is firearms. Ishibori is the team's analyst and computer expert. He has a keen eye to the smallest details, and most of the time he stays quiet and reserved. I stuck those two characters together for a very specific reason, and that is they don't get as much attention as the other members of the Night Raiders. Some of the members of Teal, Dunamists, the villains of the show, and those two are getting pushed to the background, and the biggest problem with them, one of them, and I'm not saying who, is very important to the show's final arc, basically the two last episodes, and they barely get any attention until like one episode before the finale, and they don't get the proper build-up. But yeah, the reason for that would be explained later on. And on the Tilt side, we have the director of Tilt, Yoichiro Matsunaga, a cold figurehead to Tilt, with an ice-cold personality. His wife sadly passed away in the battle between the one and the next. He's the only one that remembered that, and it's really sad and upsetting that he needs to hide it away from his daughter. He's adamant to discover how the Ultraman beings work, even if it kills the host. He's very much an interesting character because you may believe that he's just another kind of higher up character that you barely see, but you see him a lot more than other characters. He has an entire episode surrounding him and his daughter. Even when Kamun got recruited to the Night Raiders, he was the one that recruited him. Again, it's very much an interesting idea of like the director is very active. And then there is Yu Kirasawa. He usually coordinates the Night Raiders operations against the Space Beast as a part of the CIC as Tilt's strategist. taking a form of a hologram that can be wherever he wants it to be. I like the mystery surrounding him, which stem from him being very knowledgeable about the space beasts and Ultraman, being in a very high position in Tilt despite his young age, and his connection to the third Dunamist. That is really interesting. And slowly as the show progresses and as the story kind of opens up in the weird crooked way that the last couple of episodes of Nexus kind of holds its story, is really cool. The one thing that I appreciated the most out of Tilt, and that is they were kept away from the public for the entire season, much like how Sig was for the first 2 episodes of Gaia, but for the entire duration of the season. And to add to that, I enjoyed seeing Tilt's other departments outside of the Night Raiders and the office. We got to watch the cleaning team who cleans up when a beast gets dispatched, and the MP, which you might think it's military police, but is actually memory police. A little spoiler alert about the season: their duty is to remove people's memory after coming into contact with a space beast. And this is how they kind of wiped everybody's memories from the fight between the first and the next 5 years ago. But the way they got to that situation, I'm not going to explain. Before I talk about the Dunamist, I want to talk about the villain of the first half of the show, Shinya Mizurugi. He was the vice captain of the Night Raiders when Nagi joined them. When she did, the two had an uncanny ability to sense space beasts, even when TLT's equipment couldn't. Mizurugi was beginning to have dreams and visions of strange ruins. Mizurugi hates the space beast because he believes that the Earth is a world of survival of the fittest. His hatred got him in contact with Dark Mephisto, and on the mission that he was pronounced dead, they fused with the intention of bringing the apocalypse to Earth. I genuinely loved Mizurugi's character. It felt like he was a window to Nagi's future if she didn't have Kamon. Mizurugi as a villain was actually really fun. Translating what he's doing as a hunting game is really interesting, and I kind of wished he was the villain for the entire season. As I stated multiple times, Nexus had a lot of firsts. One of them is being the idea of the Dunamist. The idea of one Ultraman having multiple hosts in a show, creating a link in the chain of light, is really cool. And also having most hosts get their own secondary form is really cool. And Nexus gets their name from the thought that they form a nexus of links with their host. The names of Nexus forms all correspond to a person's development from childhood to adulthood, starting with infants that translate to childhood, Junis, which translate to youth, and Noah, whose name stems from nostalgia, which translate to looking back at one's life after in their youth and their childhood, implying that Noah represents the adult stage. These also mirror Kamon's mental and spiritual development throughout the series. The first Dunamist in the world of N was Maki. I already kind of talked about him, so let's move on to the second Dunamist, June. If you remember, he was supposed to be the protagonist of the Yellow Eyes project, a photographer that was passionate about his job. June's lifelong philosophy is to put his life on the line in order to exchange for something more valuable. June specialized in war photography as a photojournalist. During an assignment in a war-torn country, he was severely injured and later was nursed in a rural village by an orphan named Sarah. Under her care, the two would bond during his recovery. Sarah saw June basically as her older brother. June was an interesting character. We begin the show with him already being Ultraman. We get a glimpse at his time in the war and more or less how he got his powers. June's character could have been a disheveled man that sees the worst in humanity, but he sees his power as Nexus as something that he can protect humanity away from the horrors of violence and war. June serves as Kamon's mentor, trying to teach him not to get engulfed in the darkness and embracing the light when Kamon was at his lowest point. In his arc, it has one of the most interesting side stories, with one of his former colleagues trying to unearth what's going on with Ultraman, the Space Beast, and Tilt, where we discover that Tilt controls the media, so no news coverage would come out about them and the Space Beasts. The third Dunamist after June was Ren Senju, a cheerful and optimistic man that works in an amusement park. There is a lot of mystery surrounding him, like how he's so smart, why there is an MP agent that was sent to stalk him, and what his connection to Yo. Where Ren gets introduced, the show takes a slightly lighter tone. It doesn't become a full-fledged comedy, but it is quite lighter than June's arc, because the show's tone very much changes with the Dunamist. June as a character was a lot more serious because the way that he carried his tragic past, while Ren tried to not think about his past and his unknown future, and it shows in the way he fights, not really caring about getting injured. If you really think about it, June's tragedy all stemmed from the past, while Ren's stems for the present and the future. It's kind of interesting. Now it's a lot more difficult to actually recommend you an episode because of the show's serialized nature. If I can give you an example, one episode can end with a beginning of a fight between Nexus and a Space Beast, and the following episode can begin with Nexus just beating the Space Beast. So for the rest of the episode is just the characters talking to each other. So if I can use one episode as an example for an episode I could recommend you, is the first one, or Ultraman the Next. But if I need to pick an episode that's not, episode 1 or Ultraman the Next, it's probably episode 6. This is the episode when we learn about June's backstory. Let's talk about Ultraman Nexus and Ultraman the Next visual and sound design. I think a good percentage of the OST does fall a little bit on the generic butt rock from the early 2000s, but everything surrounds Nexus, specifically in the show, is absolutely majestic, beautiful, and godlike. It feels like some godly being landed on Earth to protect us. Ultraman Nexus did brought back the idea of having two openings, and those two songs really fit well to the show's tone and the way the Dunamists are being presented. The first opening being Hero. It's such a damn banger with such a great chorus, and the acoustic guitar part is so damn good. Hero is a motivational song about self-improvement and becoming a hero by overcoming fear and weakness. It encourages men to be stronger for others, protect and support those around them, and stand up on their own when they fall. It acknowledges that it's not going to be easy to be strong and courageous, but it's necessary in order to become the person that you want to be. The bridge of the song suggests that sometimes it's difficult to find motivation and stay positive, but it's important to take a deep breath and renew your commitment to self-improvement. The song ends with a call to action for men and women to be strong and courageous, to have the courage to do what's right, and to be the heroes of their own life. And the second opening being Blue Fruit. In my opinion, the best out of the two, but it still holds the same quality as Hero, but in my opinion, it's slightly more catchier. The lyrics of the song express a message of tenacity, determination, and self-discovery. The song encouraged the listener to turn a painful experience into action and to use them as a catalyst for growth. It also touches on the idea of individuality and self-empowerment, emphasizing the importance of taking risks and having the courage to face challenges. The image of the unsweetened blue fruit is used for a metaphor for the potential that lies within the individual. The repetition of the phrase, "Can you please give some power to me?" suggests that the singer is seeking support and encouragement from others on their journey of self-discovery and growth. Overall, the lyrics convey a sense of optimism and hope, encouraging the listeners to to embrace their own individualities and take risks and overcome obstacles in pursuit of their own goals. Nexus is one of the few seasons that had 3 ending themes. The first ending theme is The Sun Always in My Heart. It's about a person going through some tough times in a romantic relationship. The first verse expresses the surprise and confusion over how things have changed, and the second verse describes how the person's feelings became cloudy and turned into rain. The chorus is a positive message about keeping a bright and hopeful outlook on life, even during difficult times. The bridge of the song repeats the chorus, but adds that the singer is good at killing time when she's alone. Overall, the song is about the ups and downs of a romantic relationship and the importance of maintaining a positive outlook on life during difficult times. I really like that song. At first, I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but it is really good. Again, not the best out of the 3, but it is really nice to listen to. The second ending theme is You Gave Me Wings When I Couldn't Fly. It's a love song that expresses the speaker's feelings of love and gratitude towards the significant other. The first verse speaks about when the speaker met their loved one and promised them to never lie or regret anything. The second verse expresses the speaker's gratitude for their loved one love and saying that they were never alone because of their partner's support. The bridge talks about the speaker's inability to understand the vastness of the sky, even though they seen it from their small window. The final verse speaks about the singer's belief that love is always elusive and that the loved ones stole their heart without them realizing it. The song concludes with the repetition of the chorus, emphasizing the singer's gratitude towards their loved ones for giving them wings and making them feel free. In my opinion, this is the best song out of the 3. I don't know, it's something about the intro and the way that the song kind of sounds just makes it stupendously catchy. The third ending theme is Red Hot Beat. The song expresses the feeling of the protagonist in a world where people are expected to be cool and tough to survive. It reflects on the difficulties of fitting in and finding a place to belong, and the desire to break free from the construct of society and pursue one's dream. The first verse set the scene in a distorted world where people walk with their heads down and the sky is warped. The second verse comments on the culture to pursue to be cool and tough and the struggle to find a place to belong. The third verse describes the protagonist's determination to keep moving forward no matter what, no matter how difficult the journey may be. The final chorus is a declaration of the protagonist's pride and resiliency. They refuse to be held down by the expression of others and are willing to fight for their dream. At first, I believe the third ending was the weakest one, but after re-listening to it, I believe that the second one is still the best, while this one is actually second best. And the first ending is actually kind of the worst. But yeah, visually the show looks fantastic. There are still shots that leaves me speechless. As I stated earlier, the budget of the show got reduced, so for a good portion of the show, we didn't get to see Nexus fight in the city, but mostly in the forest. But to not make the fights look too boring, the show introduced the meta field, a thing that Nexus can create. It looks awesome from the red rocks and the cool looking sky, and later on we got introduced to the dark field G, as pretty much the opposite of the meta field, and this also looks really cool. And when finally we got to see Nexus fighting the city, it felt more important, and it's really cool. One of the coolest things about Ultraman the Next, Nexus and Noah, they are all the same Ultraman, but they do count as different Ultras at the same time. The idea of switching host was also taken into consideration while designing the central Ultra for Nexus. Nexus would, for the lack of a better phrase, grow up, with each shape he assumed as he changed into them. His name, Alphines, was derivative from the French word for infant, and described him as being pure silver and youthful looking as his base condition. Alphines was made to appear gender neutral, and it might belong to anyone. In works like stage play, where Nexus addressed themselves using pronouns that represent the characteristics and with more of a toddler speaking pattern, this gender neutrality is highlighted. It would appear that Nexus is growing up into genius form. In stage shows, he would use pronouns and speak in a manner similar to the host who's commonly associated with these states. Janice Red reflects June and Janice Blue reflects Ren. Noah was the final state of Nexus, all grown up, all encompassing, even godlike. In subsequent media, Noah keeps using gender neutral pronouns and addresses themselves with terms usually reserved to godlike figures. Hiroshi Maruyama also made multiple drawings featuring more feminine version of Noah and Nexus in his spare time. Also, samurais helped to influence Nexus design. As a side note, the design for Ultraman the Next during the planning stages of Project Yellow Eyes. It was based on an old Ultraman idea where the red element of Ultraman's skin were meant to be pure muscle and the silver parts were meant to be metal armor. The goal of the Next was to completely recreate Ultraman while keeping his iconic features, such as the wrinkled face of the Type A mask. Maruyama wanted the Next to be strange and a mutant, incomplete, like it was freshly made out of clay, which helped in the long run with the idea of Nexus evolving and becoming more refined over the course of the show. So now, let's talk forms. Ultraman the Next, Alphines, is okay. I don't know, it's something about the face that is kind of throwing me off. But the Nexus Genesis form is a big improvement. I like how much it looks like 66 Ultraman. Now let's talk about Nexus Alphines. It looks great. I love the color palette of the suit better than Ultraman the Next. And I really like his little helmet. I don't know, it's kind of funny. Genesis Red is amazing. It's my favorite form of Nexus. The combination of red, silver and black absolutely slaps. But there is Genesis Blue. That is the complete opposite of Genesis Red. Something about it feels empty, and it's mainly the chest area. I think it needs slightly more silver and maybe more black would also help it. And now let's talk about Ultraman Noah. Ultraman Noah looks like if Ultraman was a god. It portrayed his presence of a higher being, and it looks like it, and it feels like it. And also, I really like how shiny the suit is. Nexus had 4 Dark Ultras, the first one being Dark Faust. They're fine. I don't know, something about the suit looking kind of like a clown is weird and creepy at the same time. I really like the color scheme, but the pointy feet are, in my opinion, a total killer. In my opinion, it looks funny. While Dark Mephisto is absolutely amazing. It's literally the best suit out of Nexus. Like, I love the color scheme. I love the black eyes. It makes him look like a hybrid between a monster and an ultra. And then we have Dark Mephisto's Y. It's just the OG Dark Mephisto suit, just with red eyes. You're making him look like a bigger clown than Dark Faust. And the final one is Dark Zengi, and his production origins is really interesting. Bandai wanted to maximize profit, even though this wasn't the best series to push toys. Knowing that the series was tight on money, Bandai thought up a good toy idea that would be simple to produce on both their hand and the show's hand. Bandai would come up and suggest a villain for the series, this villain was Black Noah. Black Noah was just a vinyl figure of Ultraman Noah that the head designer Hiroshi Maruyama painted black and red everywhere except his eyes. The creative staff of Nexus honestly really liked the idea, and only took them one planning stage to insert Black Noah into the show, now under the name Zengi, but with some minor changes to the design and red eyes. Bandai did not know they changed the eyes from yellow to red until after they started producing the Zengi toys. This would be a problem for later. Dark Zengi looks really cool. Something about a jet black Ultra with some red on him is absolutely amazing, and it took me until now to fully understand that Dark Zengi is just the same suit as Ultraman Noah without the wings. I'm probably blind, but it shows how good the design for both Noah and the reverse colorway for Dark Zengi. And to my favorite monster suit, the one from Ultraman the Next, look really cool. I like that the final form you can see the animals that the one absorb to get specific powers. Galberos being a really cool looking Cerberus monster, Nociferu straight up looks evil, the same with Kotura, specifically his face. It looks like the type of monster that you would find in hell. I absolutely love and hate Vampira because I really like his color scheme, but he activates my arachnophobia and Izumarer. I absolutely love fusion monsters, and this idea of all of the monsters from the series and the movie combining into one is absolutely amazing. On the 2nd of October, Nexus would make its television debut with a well-rated first episode, but it wouldn't last. Before average out in the 2% area, the ratings would plummet like a rock, from 3 to 2 to even 1%. Children showed almost no interest in the plot of Ultraman Nexus, and any adult viewer who might have tuned in were either unable to do the show's airtime or were turned off by the series of scathing reviews in one of the largest newspapers in all of Japan, the Asahi Shinbun. This review ruined the public perception of Nexus to the masses, and only affirmed the thoughts that those who already dismissed the series had. These reviews were noted as coming off as a bit biased and angry that a show like Nexus exists at all. They called the show cheap, ham-fisted, and a shallow drama desperately crying for adults' attention. The situation only got worse, where parent groups found out about the show and got extremely mad for the content being exposed to their children. Perhaps due to executive negligence, Nexus continued to work without issue and moved unaffected by the reviews and public perception, up until the show's dismal ratings made the network completely lose faith in the show. In all honesty, Nexus's backing crumbled like a house of cards. It started out on the public scale, which was unimportant, but when toy sales sharply declined, the real problem started. It was challenging to promote Nexus-related products. The majority of goods they tried to market didn't catch on. The toys in particularly. Toy retailers that picked up merch for the show were barely able to make a profit off of them. The toys would just sit down on the shelf and collect dust. It got to a point where many retailers straight up refused to pick up future merchandise for the show. That changed, however, when Bandai released the yellow-eyed Zengi vinyl figure. The yellow-eyed Zengi vinyl figure did not match with the Zengi in the promotional material. People refused to buy these misprints. This resulted in further friction with the remaining toy sellers, who felt that Bandai and Subaraya Production were just getting lazy at this point. Once again, they began to back away. They believed that Nexus was a failure and that promoting the product for the show was impossible. The cost cost of airing advertisement during the program decreased. Sponsor grew wary and ratings were far from rising. There was just one choice left, according to the TBS network, to cut the show off and cancel it. In a flash, it was finished. The initial 50-episode run of Ultraman Nexus was reduced to 37 episodes, a 13-episode decrease. No one involved in the production of the show honestly anticipated the cancellation, which came as a complete shock. Writer Iota was the angriest about the cancellation, having just finished scripting the entire next arc of the show when the news dropped. And this is the biggest problem of the show, the cancellation of those 13 episodes. Because in the beginning of the show, you saw the show plant a seed. You saw the show start watering the seed until the flower grew. But in the second half of the show, specifically around 10 to 9 episodes until the finale, you start seeing the seed being planted, you see a little bit of watering, but then we jump cut straight away to the flower being already blooming. Characters investigating stuff off screen, discovering stuff off screen, minor characters that barely got any screen time become the most important character in the show, and that was Nexus' biggest handicap. The final arc of the show was supposed to be Zengi's arc, as Nexus jumped from host to host seeking to dodge his new enemy. In this arc, Zengi is going to be a chaotic and destructive force relentlessly hunting Nexus. Nexus would move from Hiraki to Mizu until reaching Nagi. Nagi is a Nexus host would eventually travel back to the past to save a young Kamon from drowning and learn the source of Kamon's steadfast belief and his earnest heart. Upon understanding Kamon, Nagi would transfer Nexus to Kamon in the future, where he would take the form of Noah, finally destroying Zengi, ending the hunt and the life of the Dark Replica. Each Nexus host would acquire a special Genis form with a range of colors that would correspond with the characteristics of Nexus's host in the current time. However, this arc wouldn't be the show's last. The show's final fight would be with Lucifer, the true villain of the show. Lucifer's arc is unknown. All through, it's suspected that the concept for it were used to inspire Hasagawa's Nexus light novel, which featured Kamon and Noah encountering a demon after a time jump. Aspects of the conflicts with Lucifer and Lucifer's characters were incorporated into Zengi in the series finale. Even the renewed sense of interest in the series by the public at large wasn't enough to turn things around. In fact, the boost of ratings was rather short-lived compared to past movie release TV show synergy. Nexus continued to chug along with lackluster rating until peaking at its finale, getting its highest rating in the entire series, 6.7%, which was double the average. It's important to note that Nexus wasn't meant to be a big change in Ultra. Nexus was always meant to be a one-off experiment. Ultraman 2 Requiem was only planned to give the show more of a proper ending before it too got cancelled. While Nexus was airing, a vast array of ideas were being developed, including a series of a group of Ultra with elemental power, a more conventional program following the Showa formula, bringing back Ultraman Justice, and even original concept for Mebius. The failures of Nexus did nothing but push Subaraya Productions' creative in a more traditional direction. The executives were the ones most impacted by Nexus's failure. Because of the series, Hideaki Tsubaraya was fired and higher management was completely overhauled. When people reflect on the state of Ultra in the early 2000s, they usually point fingers at one factor for the series' decline and eventual exit from mainstream television. Ultraman Nexus is that one thing. Ultraman Nexus was a show that was cursed with a string of bad luck that caused the show to fail in a variety of ways. This, of course, did not help Subaraya Productions' declining financial situation. The fall of Subaraya Production was unavoidable. The chaos at the executive creative level was unavoidable. The failure of Nexus, on the other hand, defined the future direction of the next two Ultra shows. Even with the failure of Nexus, Subaru Production isn't shy to move away from the Ultra, making them important to characters like Zero and giving them a grander universe standing, with them being the first light. Bandai a couple of years ago released a set of the Ultra replica Evolved Thruster and the Blast Shot, and for the show's 10th anniversary, Ultraman X, the Ultra show that was airing around that time, had a tribute episode for the Ultra, where the vice captain of ZO became the longest reigning female Dunamist. They even brought back Common's actor to play in a cameo as the vice captain's husband. And from the rumors about Ultraman Blazer, it seems like Ultraman Nexus's fingerprints are all over this show. The story of this show's production was a long affair of raw creative determination, fighting misfortune at every turn. The clash resulted in one of the series' longest production sagas. Nexus was never intended to be Ultra's newest starting point. It was also not intended to be the fin that would save Subaru Production from its financial situation. In fact, nothing could have. And on the other hand, it wasn't the Subaru Production killer, regardless how Nexus ended. Subaru Production was still able to continue making shows in somewhat normal quality and capacity after that point. So what exactly is Nexus? What role does it play in Ultraman's grand history? The Ultraman franchise imagination and flexibility are best demonstrated by Ultraman Nexus. How can it have so many different appearances and personality but still feels like Ultraman? Because Ultraman is something bigger, more expensive. Anything may seem to fit into the complex fabric of the series. People can use this series to show their creativity in many different ways. The Ultraman franchise is consistently trying to reinvent itself. Whatever the case, these shows are also connected and united in a kind of a great nexus. Nexus is a story about artists who recognize this. Even with the face of Cancellation, they produced a show that embodied Ultra in so many ways. In the end, it was a show they were all proud to be a part of and create. A show that suggested it was a time for a change, that you should get stronger for someone else, that if you are able to speak up and say what's correct, then you could also be a hero as well. Thank you, Subaru Production, for this great show. Next time on Legacy of Ultraman, I'm finishing what I started almost a year ago.